Multiply Encoded Messages.
This is Multiply Encoded Messages, a podcast about art and photography, about artists, their shared interests, and the places that shape and give purpose to their work. I'm Stuart Munro, an art writer based in Japan. I write about photography and painting, interviewing artists ranging from emerging talents to established figures. For this episode, MEM Director Katsuya Ishida talks with the Tokyo-based photographer Hiroko Komatsu about the art of contradiction, about avoiding the artist statement, about how text for an artist can be independent and still connected with artistic practice, and about the challenges of working inside and outside the institution. Uchi ni aru seido, the institution within you. Hiroko Komatsu came to photography later in life. In a way, it's helped her develop a very singular DIY style of self-determination that is thoroughly uncompromising. She does almost everything by hand and uses installations to consume an entire exhibition space. Prints can be laid across floors and up walls, at times interrupted by the odd video monitor along with other things. Walled photographs up to 30 meters long stand on one end. Some are stacked in one corner, as others hang suspended by wire. And with the presence of monitors and projectors, still image and film coexist in the same space. And as if that were not enough, viewers are also urged to walk over her work, across prints taped or stapled to the floor in an experience that consumes you as much as you consume it. As for the images, photographs are fragments that could easily be of anywhere, with locations that stay thoroughly anonymous. They document a never-ending sea of scrapyards, of architectural zones and small factories dotted throughout Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya and further afield. This abandoned post-industrial landscape is piled upon itself in a style that can be traced back to 2006 and has changed little since. As if to further prove their worth, a string of ambitious exhibitions finally saw Komatsu receive the 42nd Kimura Ihei Award for photography in 2017. The following interview was recorded in 2021 on the occasion of Ocular Inverse Transgression at MEM Gallery, a two-person show with Komatsu and fellow filmmaker Kiyoshiro Tatekawa. It took cues from different exhibitions, brought into one single room lined from floor to ceiling with images, and a small portion of the floor left blank. This small corner room became the setting for saxophonist Yoshio Otani, pacing back and forth over photographic prints with a 10-minute-long improvised performance. In many ways, that performance represents Komatsu's attitude as an artist, beyond definition, beyond words, and full of contradiction. Ishida-san, you spoke with Komatsu-san recently. How did the conversation begin?
I did an extensive interview for the show at our gallery. We discussed several issues of her works. I first asked her why she became interested in industrial landscapes. She told me about her background and how she started photographing around 2016. She recounted an interesting episode.
そうですね、写真を始めた時に
I think everyone who starts photography is always puzzled by what they should choose as subjects. When I first started, I would go out into the city and take photos. I started using a Leica M3 and have been using it ever since. When I went into the city with this camera, middle-aged amateur male photographers approached me. They said, "Hey, you have a pretty nice camera there." I really didn't like it. and I
いいところ
slowly
持って
moved to
るねと
places with
か
less and
い
less
ろいろ
people,
話しか
and
けてくるんで
before
すね。
I
それ
realized
が
it,
すごく
I
嫌
found
で
myself in
だ
these
んだん
kinds of
人がいない方
industrial
に向かって
areas.
いっているうち
As I
に
was taking
工
photographs
業
in
地
these
帯に
kinds of
たどり着いたん
places,
で
I
すね。
found that they were quite
で、
abstract. We can't
それで
recognize
しばらくそ
time
こ
or
を
the
撮
exact
影してたん
location.
ですけ
We
れど
don't know where
も、
we are. When I
そこの場
realized
所
this,
が
I
すご
became
く
very attracted
抽
to
象
these
的な場所
areas.
であるって
I
いう
would
こ
be
とです
exhausted
ね。
after shooting, but I would
で、
want to go
時
again.
代と
So
か
I continued
地
taking these
域と
kinds of
か
photographs.
Her unconventional exhibition style also evolved. She started to exhibit her photographic prints on the floor and use video monitors, which became installations.
初個展の時に壁
After
面
my
に面
first
を使っ
exhibition, I
て
enlarged the
ロー
photos
ルの
and
印和
developed
紙
them on a long
大き
roll
く
of
伸ば
print
したんで
paper
すね。
without cutting. I
で、
thought that if I made a
ロー
big
ルはつな
work,
がった
that
ま
I
ま
might
焼いたん
stand
ですけれ
out.
ども、
It was
な
difficult,
ぜそ
but
う
the
しよう
big
かと
roll of
思った
paper
かと
helped
いう
me
と、
develop my style.
目立ちた
I
かったん
felt
で
that it
すよ。
changed the essence of the
大
original
きくしたら
image,
目立つかな
but
と
it was
思っ
so
て、まずは
difficult in the
やってみ
beginning.
て。
I thought that I would do
大
it
変な
just
んだっ
once to
たん
surprise
で
the
すけど、
audience, but
大
after
きく
that,
伸
I
ばしてみ
continued
た
using
ら、
long
かなり
rolls
サ
of
イズ
printing
が立ち
paper.
上がって、
From the first exhibition, she took an unconventional way of showing her works. She further developed this style when she started her own gallery space called Broiler Space to hold her exhibitions through a year. The name is a reference to incubation space for chickens.
そうですね。その初個展が終わった後
Yes,
に、すぐ
broiler
に、
space.
ブロイ
Every
ラース
month,
ペー
I
スと
presented a
い
new
う
work in an
場
old
所なんで
rented
すが、
building, and I did consecutive
毎月
exhibitions for 1
新
year.
作を発表
And
す
I
る場所とし
decided,
て、
while
古い
doing this
小さい
project, that
建
each
物を借りまし
exhibition
て、
I would add some new
で、
element.
連続で
It wasn't a
1年間個
gallery,
展をや
so
った
there
んです
weren't
ね。で、
not
その
many
時に決め
open
たのが、
walled spaces.
毎
There were
回
many
必
large
ず
windows.
一つ
It
新
was
しいことを
originally
取
a
り入れる
commercial building used for
というルー
retail.
ルを自分に
When
決め
planning
て
exhibitions,
継
I would
続して
quickly
たん
run
で
out
す
of
けれど
walled
も、
space, so I
で、
started using the
ギ
floor and
ャ
hanging
ラ
my
リーじゃ
works
ない
from
ので、
wires.
壁が少ないんですよ。窓が
Besides
たくさん
installation, her writings and text are also important elements in her artwork. The interaction between visual and language material.
That's true, isn't it? Typically, when I go to an exhibition, I look for some sort of description on a wall, on a piece of paper, something that gives me an idea of what it is I'm looking at. I'm entering into a room, into a space, and I'm seeing this work for the first time. And I don't think I can recall ever seeing any text first time I saw her work. It wasn't until much later that I encountered something she'd written on her website, and that was really my first introduction into her writing. It struck me then that, as opposed to, say, a simple artist statement, her use of text is really striking. What stands out the most for you?
Yeah, she said from the early stage, she displayed her writings within her installation space at a series of exhibitions she did at Broiler Space. It sounds very weird or strange, and they are not artist statements, no explanation about her works. It seems they are not connected to each other, and they are independent from her works, her texts. But at the same time, they seem to be connected behind the scene. What do you think?
Yeah, very much so. It's almost like she avoids writing the statement at all, and she just basically is kind of trying to write around the work itself,
Right.
create an atmosphere rather than the specifics of what's on the wall or what's on the floor.
Yeah, and well, in her writings, she writes about various topics such as social norms, human psyche, imagination, LSD, and serial killers and child molestation. And it seems like these writings have no direct connection, but they have something in common, right?
Yeah, very much so. And I think there's a certain sense of atmosphere and also an idea to do with text, not just as language, but as material. She's using this stuff to actually form artwork. So it is, in effect, the pieces of work itself.
Right. And another thing I would like to mention is the titles of exhibitions she put for these shows. For instance, Setai Eisei Hozen, meaning the preservation of the living body, and Jinkakuteki Jiritsu Shori, meaning personality-based autonomous processing. These are the title of the exhibitions, which is not usual for installation of contemporary artists.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It might be a good idea to just read out some of her writing. This one, which I've got in front of me, is entitled The Inevitability of Verbalization. In it she says, verbalization is necessary to share thoughts, experiences regarding anything, even physical things. The verbalization of an individual is influenced by the way they belong to certain communities which share cultural norms and moralities. It's impossible to be free of these influences. An extreme example would be the abuse of children, where an offender justifies their actions based on their own morality. Verbalizing their action shifts blame to the victim, forcing this sharing of secrecy. The abuser is trapped by their obsession and will verbalize their reasons carefully, explaining their actions to the police, lawyers, counsellors, neighbours, or even themselves, taking advantage of what is deemed morally acceptable. They construct a reality the listener can grasp but not clearly tolerate. This construction is of abuse as simple and straightforward and clear for all to see. But in the production of art, the issues for the producer, the verbalizer, are intention and motive. These are influenced far too often by a multitude of shared cultural norms and moralities, on top of an already diverse range of subject matter. As a result, there's a margin of play in the reality the producer creates. Reality is not something that already exists. It's formed when verbally expressed. The producer has to verbalize their thoughts, visions, and personal experience in order to share them with other people, but this verbalized reality is different from the original urge of production. I am interested in the way in which she uses language as a material to either explore the impulse behind production or, in the case of the serial killer, the process behind it.
Yeah. And she also mentions the artist needed to verbalize her intention and about her works. Nevertheless, she knows at the same time it's impossible to explain by languages.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this contradiction is the key in this essay, I guess.
I think that's also possibly why there's no artist statement, because sometimes it's impossible to put into words the motives behind the work,
right,
and the reasons behind its kind of relentless process. There's so much work, and yet to embody it in a quick, short statement would be futile.
That's right.
多分、ポストモダン
In postmodernism, I think there is only how and no why. Things can be understood through their final product. But I believe the fundamental question of why cannot be reached through verbalizations. I've read some books about human impulses, and people often ask me, why do you go through much trouble to print 200 pictures in one night, or make photographic prints on 30-meter photographic paper? Or why do you walk around so much to shoot photos outside when it's so hot? And there is no single answer. Sometimes I answer based on the context of the conversation. I know I can say something to satisfy their curiosity, or I can explain parts about my work, but if I try to find some fundamental answer to that question, I can't arrive at an answer. That is why I became interested in serial killers. When I read about them, I realize to kill someone is a very difficult task. Finding a place, looking for a victim, getting the victim to where you want them to be, and in the end, taking the body apart and throwing it away is an extreme amount of physical labor. And I find myself wondering if the amount of pleasure gained is worth all of that work. And when I was thinking about that, I found it was very, very similar to my own process and my own artwork.
Another untitled text describes LSD and images. I think this one really discusses the meaning of words and of a word play. It's something she uses when naming exhibitions as well. In it, she writes, LSD and colour TV were introduced around the same time and brought with them a whole new world of colour, but both are still destructive to the soul. When freed from the repressive regime by rioting against social oppression, people would steal colour TVs from their neighbours, but continue immersing themselves in the images of that very same regime. jazz musician Roland Kirk, a regular LSD user, was asked by a journalist about the visual effects of LSD on the blind, but he refused to answer, saying the experience was all that mattered, and continued immersing himself in his own visions. Socially minded people might define LSD as hallucinogen, but definitions change depending on what that person's doing. The definition is just another word in the dictionary referring to a non-existent concept. Reality, on the other hand, refers to what's happening right in front of us at that very moment. Whatever happens, happens. Lies, for example, are added later. Death for those dying is an undeniable truth, and imaginary for those who are not. But it's no lie in any difference there might be between the realities we each of us sees. These texts all give the impression that Komatsu considers reality some sort of compromise, a compromise between reality as it's presented as an image in a photo book, as an exhibition, and the way that reality is also expressed in words. What do you think?
I think she doubts whether we share the same reality in the first place. The thing we are watching together gives us the same visual experience, right? Reality she presents in her installation also varied according to the medium she deals with, right?
Sure.
Like the printed matter and TV monitors and projections and so and so. So she manipulates the reality through the various medias.
There's also a sense of you're not really sure what you're looking at, whether it's actually a landscape that she's constructed or whether you're actually sort of just seeing something for real, because often the work is presented at a human scale. You know?
Yeah.
So you could quite literally be in that backyard where it is, or within that sort of dirt patch of grassland. So obviously there are different things happening, sense of scale and so on and so forth, but she's really playing with your sense of what might be real and what might not be real, depending on the way she presents it. And it's not, I don't think she's trying to deceive or to distort, but just present another alternative way into seeing not only her work, but the world she's committing to film in some way, shape or form.
Going back to the issue of the television, she mentioned an interesting episode here.
特にテレビが怖い、テレビの方なんですけど、怖いのは
Television is particularly scary because people assume that the experience is shared. There's no way that everyone has the same experience. Everyone has to have different interpretations, but people expect that everyone has had the same experience. When I was younger, when I found myself at places where people gather, like school or work, people would ask me, "Did you see that yesterday?" As if it were a greeting. I didn't like television, so I stopped watching in my late teens. And when people would ask me, "Did you see that?" I couldn't answer, and I felt like I was outcasted. I wondered why nobody questioned the fact that people could ask that question as a matter of course, and expect that everyone else had the same exact experience or had seen the exact same thing.
It's also related to the way she uses media. She first shoots images of endless industrial landscapes. She makes the prints to exhibit. Then she also films in installation space with 8mm film, and she converts the developed film into digital video. That she again uses by projecting in her exhibitions. This layering of images is an important characteristic in her work. She reconstructs the original images and layers them into different mediums. After this process, the original image is transferred to several different materials: print, film, video, and projection. The mixture of mediums becomes the figurative foreground of her work. I think her composition style really questions what reality is. She discusses.
そうですね。 最初からかはわからないんですけれども、途
I
中
think
から
photos
は
are
少し意
interesting
識するよ
because
う
they
になっ
have
てき
both an
て、
image element and a
写
material
真っ
element.
ていうも
And
の自
I
体
also take
です
videos,
ね、
but I use
撮影
film.
術っ
It's
ていうも
different
の
from
が
taking videos
イメージ
digitally,
を
where the
扱ってい
focus is on the
て、
image itself.
で、
With film, the
なんか
physical
よ
film
く
has its
最
own
近
unique
イメージ、
image and material
写真の物
qualities,
質
so
性
I'm
とか
very conscious of
物
this.
質とし
And I am
て
also very conscious
写
that I
真
am
みたい
making
な
physical
話を
space when I make
聞くんですけれ
installations.
ども、
I often say that I am making the
写真っ
inside
て
of a room.
物質とイ
So
メー
I
ジが
use
両方
reproduced
あるか
images
ら
and
すごく面
film
白い
in
な
the
と思
physical
ってい
space of an
て、
installation.
で、
Physical space has an element of
私
time. By mixing
今の
multiple
とこ
layers of
ろ
time
そ
in
の
the same
映像
space,
も撮
I
っ
am
ているん
trying
です
to
けれども、
deepen the sense of
フィルム
time.
で撮っている。
The issue of time and space are really particular to her work, I think, especially the spaces in which she occupies her work with. In some cases, the work and the room are actually treated as sentient objects that are conscious of the world around them. And so the work is in many ways dealing with a sort of timelessness, which I think is really important.
Another topic I would like to talk about is the similarity between industrial material and the human body. Architectural industrial materials are based on measurements, feet, inches, centimeters, or shaku. Shaku is a Japanese standard measurement. These measurements are based on parts of human body. Foot is literally based on the average size of a human foot. All of these industrial materials in Komatsu's work remind me of the human body. I realized this particularly when I watched one of her film, slideshow, where she shot several gravures. Then I noticed the connection between the human body, in this case corpse, and her architectural industrial materials. The scale of industrial material is based on the size of human body. For example, one tatami is 180 by 90 centimeter, which is in shaku standard 3 by 6. And the height of coffins are also 180 centimeter. These industrial landscapes look deserted, but there are human beings hidden underneath. Here is an interesting comment by Komatsu.
イヴァン・イリッチが脱病院化社会って70年代に書いてるんですけど、
Ivan Illich wrote a book called Medical Nemesis in 1975. In it, he criticized modern medicine and says disease is produced at hospitals and commodified. Therefore, death is also commodified. As society produces more and more things, our bodies also become commodities. Jean Genet wrote an essay about the sculptor of Alberto Giacometti. My memory is not so clear, but I think he said something about how theaters and graveyards should be returned to the city. Theaters are entertainment for the living, but he puts them together with graveyards. So maybe there is not much of a difference between life and death. Maybe there is no real need to separate the living and the dead. So as you said, there is an interesting juxtaposition between the size of the human body and the industrial landscapes that I photograph.
Theatre of experience to the living is maybe possibly a good way of describing her more recent exhibition or film presentation, Silent Sound, which will be happening at MEM Gallery in August. Between 2019 and 2020, Komatsu filmed 3 performances with her 8mm film camera, compiling 3 different performances. And these films will be projected simultaneously using 3 different projectors and a unique looping system. And the film will be dynamically cut across the length of the gallery, pulled and attached to the wall, creating 7 to 8mm film loops. They're all recordings of live performances, and the films are silent as well. The images was reminiscent of Komatsu's other abstract work that focus on unidentifiable industrial areas and landscapes. But Komatsu deprives the viewer of any of the music, which is the essence of live concert, really, but fundamental elements as well, which are not visible. We don't know who the performers are, nor when and where the performances took place. All we know is that they were captured on black and white film, and you only are really aware of the fact that there are periodical reflections of light and the various sequences and equipment that are being used at the same time. And in addition to the screening, there will be a booklet and a DVD of these films combined together. I think this juxtaposition between the body and landscape is ultimately the very essence of her work in many ways, not just in the way that it's received as somebody who goes into a space to see her work, but also as material itself. She's dealing with her work across different scales. The work is really theatrical, but without actually being showy or entertainment at all, and essentially is dealing with both kind of things that are both alive and dead at the same time. There's a sort of interstitial layer of inquiry that her work is really interested in. It's indirect and it's dealing with kind of many unresolved conclusions, but she's ultimately presenting them not as facts, but as sort of an open question mark, a way to sort of continue a conversation. Her work is very open in that sense, even though it might appear very differently. The world, as she says, is full of contradictions, and in a sense all of her work seems to sort of jump between different states, between the idea of working within an institution to working outside it, to working with other people, and even the images of other people in performance and involving in her own work in a very sort of particular methodical fashion. She works with 8mm film, she works with camera film, but she also works digitally, and it's very difficult to tell which is which at times. All of these different things, all these different aspects, all these different materials, as well as the languages that she uses, the texts that seem to be open-ended, the non-apparent artist statements, but also the texts that seem to kind of cover territory that would at first seem sensitive, but ultimately are dealing with a kind of interested inquiry with languages material, in their own way, multiple encoded messages, dealing with the world as one big contradiction. This episode of Multiply Encoded Messages was produced and edited by Katsuya Ishida, with sound design by Misaki Norihiro. It features the voices of Gen Nakazato and me, Stuart Munro. Special thanks to Hiroko Komatsu and Osamu Kanemura. If you enjoyed this episode, you might consider rating us on Apple Podcasts, or think about letting others know by spreading the word online. Until next time, see you soon.